It's 2 a.m. and your phone is at 1%. No charger in sight. For most people, that single moment causes a flicker of real anxiety. Now imagine that feeling, but the thing dying isn't your phone. It's the only source of light, warmth, and protection for 50 miles in any direction, and you have no idea how to bring it back. For most of human history, that wasn't a hypothetical. That was a Tuesday. Here's the part almost nobody understands about ancient fire. It wasn't lit fresh every time someone needed it. Lighting a fire from absolutely nothing, and what we now call friction fire, is brutally difficult even for someone who's trained for years. So humans developed a completely different strategy. They didn't make fire constantly. They kept it alive constantly. Researchers studying ancient fire behavior describe this directly. People who depend on fire don't strike a new one every time they want one. Fire is curated, conserved, carried. This single fact changes the entire question. The real crisis ancient humans faced wasn't how do we make fire? It was what happens if the fire we've been keeping alive for weeks finally goes out. So what actually happened? First, let's understand exactly what was at stake, because it was far more than warmth. Researchers at Tel Aviv University studying fire use at sites in Israel, Kenya, Ethiopia, and Spain, dating back nearly 2 million years, found something unexpected. At every location where early fire use shows up in the archaeological record, the remains of large game animals show up alongside it. Their theory, fire's earliest and most critical job wasn't cooking at all. It was protecting the kill. A massive carcass from an animal like a hippopotamus could feed a group of 25 people for over 3 weeks. That much meat left unprotected becomes a magnet for every scavenger and predator within smelling distance. Fire smoked it, dried it, and guarded it. The flame was a fence nothing wanted to cross, which means a dead fire wasn't just a coal camp. It was an unprotected, rotting food supply and an open invitation to every predator nearby. But the danger didn't stop at the food. It was structural to everything else too. Fire was the wall between a human group and the dark. Predators that would never approach a lit camp would test an unlit one almost immediately. Warmth that kept hypothermia at bay through a freezing night disappeared the moment the coals went cold. The light that let a group keep working and talking after sunset vanished, plunging the camp into the kind of darkness modern humans almost never experience. Total, moonless, and silent except for whatever was moving in it. Archaeologists studying some of the oldest known hearths describe fire as something that prolongs the working day and serves as a really important mechanism for social bonding. Entire societies, in a very real sense, were built around a ring of light. Take the light away, and you don't just lose comfort. You lose the architecture that organized the whole group's night. So the fire wasn't comfort, it was infrastructure. And infrastructure failing meant the entire system underneath it failed too. Here's where it gets interesting. Ancient humans built an entire defense system to prevent this exact scenario. It had almost nothing to do with starting fire and everything to do with never truly losing it. The strategy was ember management. A fire that looks finished still holds a bed of hot coals for hours if it's banked correctly. Covered in ash to slow the airflow. Insulated, deliberately starved of enough oxygen to flare, but never enough to fully die. Groups designated people to watch this overnight in shifts. The same way a modern household might assign someone to watch a sleeping infant. Rekindling from a single surviving coal is far easier than starting from nothing. Add dry tinder, blow gently, and a coal that looks nearly dead can be roaring again in minutes. Archaeological hearths used over months show ash layers more than 20 centimeters thick, not from one long fire, from the same coals, fed and refed for months, never fully allowed to die. But sometimes, despite every precaution, it happened anyway. A storm rolled through too fast. A flood swept the camp. A group had to move overnight and couldn't carry coal safely. The fire died completely. Therefore, every group needed a backup, carry and muscle memory, how to start fire from absolutely nothing. The two primary methods were the hand drill and the bow drill. The hand drill is simpler in design but brutal in execution. A straight spindle spun rapidly between bare palms against a fireboard, hands sliding downward with every rotation, demanding real conditioning because the hands provide both spin and pressure with almost no mechanical advantage. The bow drill uses a flexible bow and cord wrapped around the spindle, letting the arm do less direct work while the bow handles rotation. It's more learnable, which is likely why it spread so widely across cultures on different continents that never made contact with each other. Both rely on the same physics. Friction generates heat, heat turns wood dust into a tiny coal, and that coal, caught fast in dry tinder, breathed on with exact practice patience, becomes fire again. It sounds simple in a sentence. It is not simple in practice. Wood has to be bone dry, never green, never damp. Pressure has to be exact, not too light to generate heat, not so heavy it stalls the spin. Speed has to be sustained for minutes without rest in cold hands, often in genuine panic because the people depending on that fire are watching and waiting, and a failed attempt means starting completely over. This is the skill nobody talks about when they imagine ancient survival. Not hunting, not building. The ability to kneel in the freezing dark with shaking hands and produce heat from 2 pieces of wood in pure technique. Because the alternative was a night with no warmth, no light, no preserved food, and no protection. Now here's a genuinely extraordinary part. Some ancient humans didn't need fire constantly at all. Research on Neanderthal cave sites in colder climates found long stretches with no evidence of fire use, even during the coldest stretches of the Ice Age. One researcher studying this put it plainly: modern humans are obligate fire users. We cannot survive without it in some form. Neanderthals evidently were not. They endured brutal cold without the one tool we consider essential to existence. Nobody fully knows how. Maybe denser body hair, maybe clothing that hasn't survived the archaeological record, maybe a metabolism built differently from ours entirely. It's one of archaeology's open questions, and a quiet reminder that fire dependence, total as it feels to us, was a choice our specific branch of the human family made, not a law every human ancestor was bound by. For Homo sapiens, though, the dependence became real and permanent. The cooking hypothesis, developed by primatologist Richard Wrangham, suggests this dependence reshaped our entire biology over hundreds of thousands of years. Smaller jaws, smaller guts, a brain that burns roughly a quarter of the body's total energy, a metabolic luxury only affordable because cooked food made calories cheap and fast to extract, instead of spending 6 or more hours a day chewing raw plant fiber the way our closest primate relatives still do. Cooking also neutralized toxins in certain roots and tubers and killed pathogens hiding in raw meat, expanding what was safe to eat in the first place. We didn't just start using fire. We evolved around the assumption that it would always be there, ready, the moment we needed it. Which means the moment it wasn't there, every part of that evolutionary bet was suddenly due, all at once. So when the fire died, ancient humans didn't see a minor inconvenience. They saw the floor disappearing from under an entire way of life, built across nearly 2 million years of accumulated dependence. And they responded the only way that consistently worked. Not panic, but practiced, repetitive, bone-deep skill. Watch the coals through the night. Feed them before they fully die. Protect the meat smoking above the flame. And if the worst happens anyway, kneel down in the freezing dark, pick up the spindle, and start again. Exactly the way it was taught by someone older, who learned it the same way, generations back. Exactly the way it always worked, eventually, if your hands didn't give out first. Next time your phone hits 1% in an unfamiliar place, notice the small spike of unease that runs through you. Now multiply that by every degree of warmth, every hour of usable light, and every pound of food that would otherwise rot, and every predator that fire used to keep circling just outside the dark. That feeling is older than language itself. You inherited it from people who solved it the only way it could be solved, with patience, friction, and the absolute refusal to let the dark win.